Welcome to the Sheff United Way. My name is Hal. We're going to talk about next season. We're going to look ahead. We're going to do this realistically as if Sheffield United are in the Championship. Of course, there's always that slim possibility that we might not be, but we have to assume, we'll assume them that we're going to be in the Championship next season. Ollie is here. How are you?
Hey, I'm not bad, thank you. How are you doing? It's been a while.
Yeah, it has been absolutely blooming ages, but it's good to see you back with your little face. And you've done a lot of work ahead of this video. You said to us a while ago, I've had a look in my crystal ball. I'm ready to talk about next season. And we're doing this very much like we wish we weren't doing this kind of video. Obviously, I'd much rather be talking to you about we are now going to cement our position in the Premier League and kick on from a mid-table finish. That's realistically not going to happen. We are recording this during this international break. We've heard about the points deductions for other teams, but I still don't think it's going to be enough. Ollie, before we get into your thoughts on tactics, outgoings, and of course, as your aforementioned crystal ball, you don't now believe Sheffield United are going to stay up, do you?
I don't know. I think, we've had the points deductions now, and we're still a long way off. We would have to win more games between now and the end of the season than we have won from the start of the season to now. And I just don't think we've really seen anything from the squad, from the club, that suggests we're going to do that. We've had some improved performances, particularly on the road, away from home. Our form's not been terrible over the last few games. But, suppose the best way to say it is you can only see your team concede 5 goals so many times at home before it batters the life out of you. And I think I've reached that stage where it has, to an extent, battered the life out of me. And yeah, I actually, never mind being disappointed we're dropping to the Championship, but I think it's probably better for us. I think as fans, it will be better for us because it won't be like this constantly. So yes, I am resigned to the Championship, but I'm not necessarily certain that that's a bad thing because we might see us win every now and again, which will be lovely.
And it's the most exciting league. If you are watching this as a video rather than listening as a podcast, what I'd love you to do is get involved with this. All right, this isn't all about Hal and Ollie. We want your thoughts. Everything we go through here, we'd love your opinion on. I'm going to throw one out there, Ollie. Don't worry, you don't need to answer this because it's probably a bigger question. But I want you to let me know in the comments why you think Sheffield United are suddenly better away from home than at home. Okay, that's a big one. It's very rare in my time supporting United that has been the case. But let me know your thoughts on that. And now everything we go through from now on, love your thoughts on. Ollie, I'm going to start with the big one. Tactics. We've seen a bit of 4-4-2. 𝗜ษ์brought in a bit of 4 at the back at one point. I want to go maybe even as far back as that Manchester United home game. And then we've changed it a few times over. We've seen a few different formations. It's been rare that we've actually had an obvious plan B. What are we going to be playing next season, as you've already said, assuming we're in the Championship?
Yeah, so it's a difficult one, to be honest, because when Wilder first came in, we very much looked to be moving towards that 4 at the back. When we were making a change from 𝗜ษ์one of the things that I said was, I think it's a good time to try something new. We've been in the Premier League now for 2 of the last 4 seasons, and both of those, we missed one for COVID as fans. But on the pitch, what we saw twice now, we have been one of the worst teams in Premier League history in terms of the points we're getting, the games we're winning. And so we've been really struggling to make an impact at the top level while still playing this 5 at the back system. So I was sort of hoping we might look for a change. Maybe we would see something different. And then when Wilder came in, we did, for a little while, see something a little bit different. I think it was 8 of his first 10 games we started with 4 at the back. We were trying to try something a little bit new. We'd seen, obviously, Brooks come into the midfield. We had a bit more energy. And whilst results really weren't there, we were seeing something a little bit different that we were starting to try out. That has changed in recent games. I think it's in 6 of the last 8, we've now played 5 at the back. And we have reverted back to that 5 at the back system. And I do think we will expect to see 5 at the back going forwards. I think we look at some of the recruitment that we did. We chased Mason Holgate through the summer. We then chased him again through January, and we were very much told that Mason Holgate was the player the management wanted. He was a player that they really wanted to go in and to bring in. And the reason that you look for a player like that is that he's a right-sided centre-back. So I do expect us to try and continue with the 5 at the back system going forwards. Now, that's not necessarily a bad thing. We talk about, I said I thought we'd been found out at the top level, but there's one man who revolutionised Sheffield United. He revolutionised 5 at the back, and he used it to drive the club forward. So if anybody is going to make this work, if anybody is going to find a way to innovate five at the back to make it work for Sheffield United again, then maybe Chris Wilder is that man. Maybe he can perform the magic because he defined the last era. Maybe he will define the next one. But there are some issues, obviously, between where we are now and where we will want to be next season. I've referred to it already. When you've lost as many games as we have, it's difficult, really, to see how you bounce back from that. And so there's going to be really key recruitment coming into how we play a five at the back system. There's some real big questions to answer about who's going to stay in terms of the contract. Now, yourself and Nick Hal did a really good video about the contract status of a number of United players, going through who should stay, who might leave. What does that mean for our squad going forwards? And I think today you've done a little bit of work on recruitment as well, because there are some key positions here that once the players go out, when we're not sure about the contracts, we are short in quite a few positions, particularly in that defence. I think if we're going five at the back, that innovative right-sided centre-back in particular, you know, Chris Basham's contract's up, really long injury. I think we expect 𝗫𝗏 to leave, so there is a hole there, and I think that's one of the positions you've been looking at.
Yeah, so if we did look at defenders, and I've done a little bit of work on this, I've looked at defenders, I've actually looked at midfielders and strikers that could be of some use to Sheffield United next season, the market values and contracts I've looked at from Transfer Market, and I've put everything in euros if anyone's interested when I was doing some research of this. The progressive data from 𝗣𝗿𝗿𝗲𝗀𝗂𝗏, breath, chances created, 𝗲𝗏, and the rest of the stats I got from SofaScore. Now, there is always a problem with comparing across different divisions, so you always have to bear that in mind. But regardless, you know, we need some stats to go on, otherwise this exercise becomes absolutely impossible. Now, you look at our number one, if everyone isn't injured, centre-back in the middle of the three, that would be, I think you'd agree, Ollie, John Egan.
Oh, 100%. Yep, completely. As I was watching your video last week, I was straight in there saying, yeah, new contract, John Egan, he would be our man, centre of the defence, unless you've got better options.
Well, what I've done is I've had to compare him with these players from his Championship 2022-23 season, where he played 3,955 minutes, because that is a sample size we can actually work with. This season, of course, has been, well, awful for Egan. But Aaron Cashin. Now, will Derby look to cash in? Because he is destined, I'm sure many will agree, for greater things than League One. He's possibly, though, destined for the Premier League. He's been playing in League One, the League One 2023-24 season. It is hard to compare too much. Now, imagine Anel was playing in League One. You know, he would be a real standout in League One. But what I've tried to do is compare to what we've seen before. He'd be, apparently, according to online researchers, value about 1.8 million. Again, that's euros. He's played 3,153 minutes. Then I had a look at 𝗚𝗏 playing at Hibs. That's in Scotland on loan from Manchester United. He's been linked with us. He's played 2,605 minutes. And then I found who I believe, for centre-back, our number one target, Sepp van den Berg, Mainz, on loan from Liverpool. Been playing in the Bundesliga. According to online, his value is around about 5 million. I'd be amazed to get him for that cheap, but you never know. Played 2,029 minutes. And aerially, everyone is at a similar level that I compared. Now, there's a few others I'm going to throw in here, but 𝗚𝗏 and van den Berg are the best aerially. On the ground, Cashin and van den Berg are similar. However, if you look at someone like Jake Cooper, who Blades fans mention, you know, he's not good on the ground. So that could be one thing to consider. Maybe we finally put the Jake Cooper signing to bed. Cashin and van den Berg are the best at winning duels overall, and Cooper, that's not his area. Timo Hubers I looked at as well from Cologne. Also, he's not that good there. But 𝗚𝗏, he clears the ball the most. When it comes to actual out-and-out defending, with Cooper and van den Berg being the lowest in that department. And that changes how you think about things there. Fishberg and Egan get dribbled past the least. Well, again, we're comparing with Egan in that championship season, with Hubers being dribbled past the most. Recovery, though, from the ball, Hubers is the best, and Cooper's the worst. Hubers and Cashin tackle the most, Cooper the least. Hubers, Egan and Cashin intercept the most. All the others are around about the same level. You see why this gets very, very difficult. Passing overall, Hubers is the best, alongside van den Berg and Fish. Long ball, Fish stands out. All the other players around are at a sort of similar level. Hubers and van den Berg seem the best on the ball in the opposition half. Cooper again coming out the worst. Everyone around a similar level, though, when passing in their own half. And progressiveness, 𝗍𝗶𝗲, again, that name. Vandenberg progressing the ball the most through passing. Cooper and Egan, the least. And I think we've seen that with Egan. 𝗍𝗶𝗲 carries the ball the most, more than others. Cashin and 𝗍𝗶𝗲 have the most touches. However, Cashin loses the ball more, whereas 𝗍𝗶𝗲 doesn't. So what I decided to put overall here was that Cashin was very strong defensively. 𝗍𝗶𝗲's very strong on the ball. And Sepp Vandenberg and 𝗍𝗿𝗱 seem to be the best all-round defenders. So I think if we were looking at maybe like a top 4 of the names I've mentioned there, Sepp Vandenberg is my number 1. 𝗍𝗿𝗱 should be number 2. Cashin would come in at number 3. And a name that maybe not many people know, but I've now mentioned him quite a few times, Timo 𝗍𝗶𝗲 of Cologne. And then I'll just touch on right centre-backs and then move on from this. Again, these have been compared with Anel Ahmedhodzic, again from his championship season, so 2,860 minutes played there. I like Ronnie Edwards at Peterborough. I know someone you've mentioned before, accurate long balls per 90. He always comes out on the top of that. A few others that I've looked at, Sonali Diomande at Lyon, Jorge, I think it'd be Jorge Fernandes, Vitória, because it's Portuguese, so Jose Mourinho, so Jorge Fernandes. There's another one I really like, 𝗂𝗓𝗓, again, based in Portugal. Wouldn't even be that expensive. Apparently, his market value is only 1 million. I'd be amazed. He's played 1,665 minutes. He's quite tall as well. He is 26. He's at that right age. And a name that I know you'll know, Ollie, and a name that I know that I think you'll like, Charlie Hughes, Wigan.
Oh, I like it. I like it a lot.
That noise
Yeah.
says it all. But again, we're comparing someone who's in League One, played 2,981 minutes, very tall. He's only 20. And I thought I'd have to throw in Charlie Cresswell at Leeds, because even though I don't think Sheffield United have had much of a chance of signing him, particularly with the way Leeds are going, it's worth looking at. Overall, Gaspar and Hughes win the most duels. Aerially, Gaspar, Fernandes, Hughes are the best. On the ground, Gaspar, Hughes and Edwards are the best. You can also see that Anel is not great at duels compared to others, but Gaspar and Hughes the most successful when it comes to duels. Hughes by far the most successful when it comes to dribbles, followed by Gaspar and Cresswell, whereas Anel is actually the worst, followed by Diomande and Fernandes, who I mentioned earlier. When it comes to defending, Gaspar and Edwards clear the ball the most. Hughes is dribbled past the least. Fernandes the most. Anel and Fernandes, though, completed the most tackles when compared. Hughes and Diomande the least. The fact that Hughes is rarely dribbled past and makes the least tackles shows, I think, a great reading of the game at such a young age. Yeah. Anel, Diomande, Gaspar intercept the ball the most. Hughes, Edwards and Fernandes the least. Again, that's sometimes based on who you're playing with. Each player has qualities in defence. However, I would say Fernandes fairly poor in that regard. Passing, Ronnie Edwards, 68% long ball success. I already mentioned that. Overall, Diomande and Edwards are the best on the ball. Interestingly, from these stats, Cresswell and Anel came out the worst. And in their own half, Diomande, Gaspar and Edwards and Hughes, all very, very good. In the opposition half, Diomande and Edwards are the best. Cresswell, interestingly, being the worst. And Anel received by far the most progressive passes, followed by Cresswell. The others are roughly grouped together. Cresswell and Anel have had the most touches in the penalty area, so they get forward the most, and that with our RCB kind of getting forward style makes sense. All the players have similar successful take-ons, however, Fernandes the worst. So I think I've kind of whittled out that Fernandes is probably not the player for us. Edwards has the most touches per game, but rarely loses the ball. Anel has the least touches, but commonly loses the ball, as does Cresswell. But these players seem to take more risks, and that's, again, something that the eye test will see more than stats. Overall, defensively, Gaspar and Hughes are very good. Hughes is very successful at dribbling. Diomande and Edwards are the best actually on the ball. Anel and Cresswell progress the ball the most. I've gone Hughes, number 1 target, then Ronnie Edwards, Gaspar, and then I'd say Cresswell, and now I'll breathe.
Yeah, I was going to say, take a moment, just chill. You know, I think at one point you were speaking so quick, thought fire was going to come out. I was like, Jesus, is he going to stop? Is he going to breathe? But I think that's some really nice breakdown in terms of looking at those players who could come in and start to fit our system again. You know, we've talked there about some of the players and how they're receiving the ball to take it forwards. We've talked about how they are potentially able to affect the game for us from that right centre-back position. And that is something that I think we have lost a little bit over the last few years. And I think if there are players in there who can come in and fill the shoes of Enel or Basham when he was in his prime. That's exactly the kind of thing that we do want to be evaluating. I think there's some names there as well that are coming in young. And I think that's always key for United at the moment. I think one of the things that we talked about so much last summer is trying to get in players of the right age profile so that if we end up struggling, if financially we end up in a position like we were in sort of 12, 18 months ago, we have assets that you can sell on at the right age that people are going to want to bring in. And there are some names there that massively excited me. You know, I made that really weird noise when you started talking about Hughes from Wigan. But I actually sit down as part of what I do with Gab Sutton, and we talk a lot about the Championship. And we sort of last season talking a lot to a Wigan fan who obviously they were relegated. They were really struggling. But the one bright spark that they always talked about as being their standout player, best player on the pitch, can't believe he's still at Wigan, was Hughes. And so if that opportunity is there and there's a chance to bring him in, he's already played Championship minutes. He's already shown, actually, that he's at the level for more Championship minutes. And therefore, I'd certainly be wanting to see what we could do in terms of trying to get a deal there. Also, Wigan's, financial position, still been in League One, started this season with a points deduction. I can't imagine they're demanding huge fees for their players still. They've got to get themselves back on an even keel. And therefore, that again plays into our hands, particularly if we do have a little bit of money or funds to play around with this summer with the parachute money and the players that we expect to leave the club, potentially bringing in some cash as well. The names for centre-back. Sepp van den Berg. Oh,
yeah, you said it better than me.
Oh,
You're getting so excited, Ollie. You're getting further and further back in your chair. You're sinking down lower.
I'll move myself back forwards. I'll be front and centre.
I can see you again. That's great.
That's better. Yeah, and also I realise I've not turned the big light on. And so I'm sat in the dark with one light just shining on my face and making me look so
And it's weird
tired.
because people don't know what time we record this, but this is super early for you. And it's obviously just quite bright for me. I haven't got any lights on, and you're shrouded in darkness. And you actually look like, when you were talking about this excited me, and you're getting lower and lower in your chair, and it's getting darker, you sounded like an evil genius.
Anyway,
I've interrupted you. Centre backs.
Yeah, I just, I've not got the evil vibe to me now. I've gone all flustered. Sepp van den Berg, though, he's the man. I think, we saw last season he was in the Championship. I think he was at Preston, I've said, with more confidence than I had. But he really stood out for them. He was, again, I think he might have been their player of the season. I speak to a Preston fan who is a huge fan of Sepp van den Berg. He really thinks he's a standout, but he does think his ceiling is going to be in the Premier League. He thinks that, he's going to take these opportunities and potentially be one of these breakthrough players that can go from Liverpool and sustain a Premier League career. So the question is whether or not he sees the Championship in his future, whether or not Sheffield United are able to capitalise on that. Because if we could, I think we would end up getting one of the best defenders in the Championship, because he's a real standout. So those names did excite me quite a bit, Hal. So let's hope you've not shot your shot too high, because all of a sudden I've gone from, rubbish in it, I hate football, to signings. These could be good.
Well, it could be. Next season, like you said, in the Championship, it could be. So where else do you think we're going to say goodbye? What positions?
Yeah, it's interesting because it's really difficult to try and pick this United team at the moment. I've referenced it before. In terms of our outgoings, one of the things that I've felt the impact of this season is a lack of connection from the fans with the players. I've felt throughout the season constantly. If someone said to me, such and such a player is going to leave, okay, cool. There's nobody right now that I'm sat here saying we can't even listen to bids for them. It'd be a crime if they were to be considered even to leave at this moment.
One of them, at the start of the season, I'll be honest, I was most excited about 𝗍𝗍𝐴𝐶 𝗫𝗍.
Yeah.
And there's been games in the season, but only a few, where I've thought I can see exactly what 𝗍𝗍𝗶𝗲 saw in him as his number one target. And I think he was brought in to replace Norwood. I know some people have said Sander, but I think he was brought in to replace Norwood because he's got more ability to get around the pitch. But I won't be devastated, and I don't know if other Blades will feel the same. I won't be devastated, not if, when he leaves at the end of the season. And I know he's probably been misquoted, probably been mistranslated, but the article he did recently where it felt like he threw some of his teammates under the bus when speaking in Brazil, I think that's probably just been a slight hospital pass from a journalist, and I'm sure if he was pushed further on that, he'd explain it perhaps differently, because he actually comes across in all the videos with the club really, really well. But I won't be devastated, and I didn't think I'd say that at the start of the season.
No, I agree. He was one of the players I was really excited about. You know, look, let's be honest. First of all, Sheffield United don't sign that many Brazilians, so let's just take
The
that for a
first,
moment in terms of
I think he's.
some
I
of
mean,
our
we've got
signings.
Machado in the youth ranks, but I don't even think we can count Marcelo because he was like
Mm.
Portuguese Brazilian. So
Yeah,
anyway,
it's
might be
not.
the first.
You don't get many peak Brazilians, and so I think there was excitement when he came in, and I think we really thought, yes, we might have got a player here. This is the kind of thing we wanted to see. But yeah, it's a transfer that realistically, you know, he's been fine, but it's not massively worked. I don't think the interviews, such as the one that you referenced, I hope he has been misquoted. I hope that it's not actually what he was saying in terms of what he wanted to get across, in terms of blaming the club rather than himself for why he doesn't play for Brazil. But it's that kind of thing that it means at the
When
end of
you
the
say it
summer.
out loud,
not
there,
bothered.
by the way, so badly advised. But yes, sorry, carry on. At the end of the summer, I think we will say goodbye.
I think we'll say goodbye. The players that there's three really that I think we will say goodbye to. There's others where we might get bids, we might not. It depends on the market. But I think the ones who will leave, obviously, would be first of all the open secret of Cameron Archer.
Mhm.
I think that 𝗍𝗍𝗶𝗲, as we've just referenced. I think the other one is 𝗂𝗂𝐿. I think 𝗂𝗂𝐿 won't be playing for Sheffield United in the Championship again. I think there was interest, by all accounts, in January that United have resisted. I don't think we will be able to resist the same in the summer. But also, watching 𝗂𝗂𝐿 this season has not been the same player we watched last season. He's not been the standout that we expected him to be. He was the one player that I was confident would step up to the Premier League and would just keep going. I was really certain that his level was so far above the Championship that he would really help us and be a standout player this season. I don't think that's been the case. I don't know if it's linked to, obviously, injury towards the end of last season, whether it's the fact that he's got the new baby, and obviously that will affect you. You have other things going on outside of your football life, which will have an impact on energy levels, on other things that you've got going on. But I think given how his season has gone, it won't be a huge distraught reaction from United fans when he is to move on in the summer. The other thing is, I think those three players are the ones who bring in the most value for Sheffield United. They're the ones who, again, let's not forget where we were 12 months ago in a transfer embargo because we weren't paying us money. We had Kieran Maguire, who's come and done a fantastic video with us on this very channel talking about how much money Sheffield United lose. And if you haven't seen that, do go back and check it out because I do not understand Sheffield United's finances. It's something that
No.
blows my mind
And
every
I'm the
single time I
one
try and think about it.
who had to read the accounts and then do the interview. And I am still slightly traumatized by the entire experience because when it comes, people who know me, I'm very good at some things like art and creativity and that side of the brain. Numbers, whoo, no chance.
He loves a pun, but he's not so sure about pie. But, you know, it was great to have Kieran on to explain that. And I think that really exemplifies why, when we've got players who have a value this summer, players like 𝗂𝗂𝐿, like 𝗍𝗍𝗶𝗲, they'll be the ones that we are expecting to leave and looking to move on. The one
and realistically, they have to move on because we'll need to bring in money from what Kieran explained. And that's even looking at accounts from previously. I mean, can only imagine what we'll be talking about 12 months' time.
Yeah, it's always a scary precipice that we're right on the edge on, it seems, in terms of our finances. But the other one that's got a big question mark for me is, in terms of players in our squad that carry significant value, of players who I think there will be a market for in the summer, Gustavo Harmer is the big question mark over what does the market look like. Do we say that at no price he is for sale? I don't think we're a club that has the ability to say that. But I think if the other two leave alongside Archer, it probably means we are in a much stronger position to keep him around. I think our midfield is probably the area where we have the most consistency, hopefully, into next season. I'm really confident we can build around Andre Brooks. We can build around Ollie Arblaster. And obviously, if you've then got Gus Harmer there, we will probably still have Norwood for his experience. And that, to me, looks like it does cover us in terms of midfield three that you can start to build around. You can really have a lot of potential in there. But there are still gaps around that. Obviously, if Archer leaves, there's a gap for striker. When 𝗏𝗏𝗏 goes back, there's a huge gap of creativity. And I'm still worried a little bit about Norrington Davies' injuries and how much time he misses, as well as his contract. Yep. We've also got contract conversations. I think it's with Max Lowe. We've also got 𝗍𝗏𝗏𝗏 going back. So three areas that I'm a little bit concerned on beyond what we've already discussed. Left wing back, creativity for 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏, and a centre forward.
All right, well, let's start with left wing back. And what I had to do for this was compare with Max Lowe Championship 2022-23 season because he played 2,006 minutes. Max Lowe, 26 now. I think you just said there. We'll say goodbye to Max Lowe. My number one here, I'll do this a bit quicker. Harrison Burrows, Peterborough, probably getting for around 3 million, according to what I've searched online. I like him. 3,208 minutes that I was looking at here for League One 2023-24 season. I like Calvin Verdonk at NEC or NEC, it might be pronounced. I'm not sure in the Eredivisie. Do you know how that team's pronounced?
NEC, because it's Nijman, isn't it?
Yes, and I reckon he'd be even cheaper. Probably 1.52 million, 2,140 minutes compared there. And Neto, that's Brazilian for quality and value. Neto Borges. Yeah, well, I don't know if he's going to be scoring that many as he's left wing back, but Neto Borges is a Brazilian, plays for Clermont in Ligue 1. And I've had a look at the 2023-24 season. I reckon he'd be probably the most expensive of the lot, 1,796 minutes. He's 27 years young. I also looked at Darlin Yongwa, a Cameroonian professional footballer who plays for Lorient in Ligue 1. And also Fabian Nürnberger from Darmstadt. They've not had a great season. Dimitris Giannoulis, who I think people will be more familiar with at Norwich, probably set you back about 3 to 5 million. He's 28. Charlie Taylor, 30. I haven't looked at too many older players, but, decent shout. Burnley knows the Premier League. Don't know if they'd be willing to say goodbye to him. Harry Boys, because he's currently a Sheffield United player. Fleetwood Town at the moment on loan. He's played 1,863 League One minutes and by all accounts has been okay. Also had to look at 𝗬𝗟 Mumba at Plymouth. A lot of excitement around him. 2,362 minutes played, probably set you back about 2 million, maybe more. And the oldest player I looked at was Aaron Cresswell at West Ham. Yeah, 34, and with his situation, probably not going to be that expensive. But Verdonk and Lowe won the most duels overall, which really surprised me, seeing Lowe top of those stats. Burrows and Cresswell the least. Aerially, Lowe and Nürnberger were the best. Burrows and Boys the worst. On the ground, Verdonk and Lowe were the best. Nürnberger and Cresswell the worst. Verdonk had the most successful dribbles. Cresswell, that's not his game. Verdonk, Taylor and Borges had the most clearances, whereas Mumba and Nürnberg the least. Yongwa was dribbled past the least, Borges the most. Verdonk and Burrows recovered the ball the most, Mumba the least. Verdonk and Lowe made the most tackles. Again, it depends who you're playing with and against. Cresswell the least, they didn't have to do that much. Borges made the most interceptions, Mumba the least. Overall, Verdonk and Yongwa were the best defenders, Cresswell and Nürnberger the worst. But when it comes to passing, Borges and Burrows the best. Overall, Mumba, Burrows, Nürnberger and Borges are all good on the ball. Yongwa, Boys and Lowe, fairly poor. We probably know that. Low. Creativity, Burrows creates the most chances alongside Nürnberger, whereas Taylor, Lowe, Borges and Yongwa, the worst. Key passes, Burrows, Nürnberger and Cresswell, the best. Taylor and Yongwa, the worst. So progressiveness, Yongwa and Borges receive the most progressive passes. Taylor and Verdonk, the least. Yongwa and Mumba had the most progressive carries. Taylor and Lowe, the least. Yongwa and Mumba seem to be the most progressive players, whereas Taylor is the least. But playing in the Premier League, this again makes sense. Overall, Verdonk is a very good defender, decent on the ball. Burrows is good on the ball and creative. Yongwa is good defensively and good at running with the ball. Taylor is good defensively. Mumba is good going forward. Nürnberger is creative. I'm losing my voice because there's so much to go through. Borges is also good on the ball, which made this really hard. Like the reason for I've done a top 6 left wing backs rather than 4 like other positions because I am anticipating 2 left wing back signings. I prefer one who is good going forward, one who is good defensively, but both kind of decent at the other would be Verdonk and Burrows. They fit that bracket best for me. So you've got, I think, Burrows number 1, Verdonk number 2, Borges number 3, Taylor number 4, Nürnberger number 5, and Yongwa number 6.
And breathe, Hal.
Thank you.
Breathe. Certainly, I think there's some names in there. I think Harrison Burrows is one that hugely catches my eye. His contract expires technically, I think, this summer, but he has got an option for a further year extension from
which they will obviously
you're not throwing that money away because
No.
someone's either paying you big for him or obviously you get to keep a fantastic player. But I think that does imply that obviously there is a deal to be struck. Peterborough, generally speaking, do seem to be fairly realistic about their transfer business in terms of the incomings that they need to make. Obviously, they're a club that have historically traded quite well. They tend to do all right in terms of bringing in cash and then replacing well. So they're one certainly to keep an eye on. But I think Burrows would be a fantastic shout. I think the others that you've gone through there, the name that always jumps out to me is 𝗤𝗿𝗻𝗂. And the reason for that is that Plymouth might get relegated. I'm a little bit in the Championship. I think Plymouth are in a lot of trouble. They've replaced their manager and dropped like a stone towards that relegation battle. And it does seem as though there's a lot of discontent. They might be the team that go down. If that's the case, then suddenly there's a deal to be made on a few of their star players, and 𝗤𝗿𝗻𝗂 is one that would certainly catch my eye as the attacking option. Obviously, defensively, I think it was sort of borne out in your stats that he's not necessarily the standout option. He's not necessarily the one who we would want to be taking forward, but as an attacking wing-back, he has been excellent in the Championship this season. He stood out in League One when he was on loan with Plymouth last year as well. And so that's certainly a couple of moves that have caught my eye just from players I've seen playing around the country in terms of those in England. I have to trust the stats on the ones I haven't seen. And yeah, I do think we need to. I think as well, what you referenced there, Hal, is really important. That balance that United need to bring. If you look at the right wing-back position, Bogle, better going forwards. Baldock, better defensively. We can play a little bit horses for courses where when we want to be on the attack, we saw it a little bit under 𝗍𝗂𝗂 previously, where if we were away from home, you would see Baldock playing and he would be more concise. We'd try not to concede goals. We would be sort of making sure that other teams were coming on to us, but that we had that solidity to make sure they weren't able to get past us. If the other team had a tricky winger, we would do the same. Baldock would be there. He would stand up to him. He would be the one who was defensively solid. Whereas when we're going to be possession dominant, when we're going to be creating, trying to break teams down, Bogle could then come in and be the one who makes that difference. We've seen him do that in so many games, particularly at Championship level. So getting that same balance on the left-hand side sounds chef's kiss to me.
Chef's kiss. Also, the sun is now shining. The weather is sweet for your living room. I don't actually know where you do this.
Office. This is my office. If this was my living room, my wife would have gone insane.
Well, this is our living room, and my wife has gone insane with all these shirts. The other area you mentioned was attacking midfield. James McAtee will not be with Sheffield United next season unless some miracle happens.
Yeah,
and I don't think
unless somebody finds a genie and makes a magic wish, I think that's the only chance we've got of James McAtee playing for United next season.
Or if a takeover was to happen and we suddenly, flush with cash. But I think it's unlikely. So I've looked at James McAtee again, Championship season, 1,898 minutes played, and I've come up with a few names. Cristo Gonzalez, Spanish professional footballer who plays in an attacking midfield role for Arouca in Portugal, probably sets back about £4 million. Another name you'll be familiar with is Fabio Carvalho, Hull City, of course, on loan from Liverpool. I don't know if we'd be able to sign him, but maybe get him on loan. Callum O'Hare at Coventry, 1,375 minutes played. I'm looking at the Championship season 2023-24 for these stats. Just a few of the names I'll throw in, but I've done most of the work on those three. Alex Robertson, Mohamed Cham Sarasevic, an Austrian professional footballer who plays as an attacking midfielder for Ligue 1 side Clermont. They have got some really good players at Clermont. They're sort of going under the radar, but probably set us back about 6 million. He's 23. Again, looking at this season for him, 1,966 minutes played. Grigos Kastanos. Now, I like him because he's a Cypriot player. I've seen him play for the Cypriot national team, and he plays for Salernitana. He's 26. Probably only cost about 2 million. I've looked at him in Serie A this season, where he's only played 1,321 minutes, but they've been 1,321 good minutes. And goals per game, all are fairly similar. Shots on target, Gonzalez is the best, with Carvalho, O'Hare, and Cham Sarasevic being in a group just behind. Conversion rate, so dribbles and conversion, shows McAtee and O'Hare to be the best, but Robertson to be very low. Gonzalez also has the best scoring frequency. Gonzalez is the best goal scorer, with O'Hare and Carvalho being close behind. Carvalho is far ahead in drawing fouls, like we saw with 𝗬𝗏 Ndiaye, and being involved with the most touches per game alongside Robertson. However, McAtee draws the least fouls and actually had the least touches when compared with these. Carvalho also provides the most key passes and the most chances. Carvalho is, though, the loosest in possession. However, when looking at his touches per game, this kind of evens out. Carvalho is the most creative player, followed by Callum O'Hare, and then 𝗵𝗵𝗃. O'Hare and Gonzalez receive the most progressive passes, with McAtee, O'Hare and Carvalho having the most touches in the penalty area. McAtee, 𝗵𝗵𝗃, and Gonzalez have the most successful take-ons, with actually Carvalho being surprisingly low in that regard. Carrying the ball, McAtee is the best, though when we look at through passing, O'Hare progresses the ball the best, with 𝗵𝗵𝗃 second. McAtee actually the worst there. And by passing and receiving, O'Hare is very good. He's also good when carrying. The most successful dribbles, McAtee, Robertson, 𝗵𝗵𝗃, and Castanos. The least successful there is Carvalho. This starts to get murky because there's so many areas that some excel in and others don't. But the best passer overall, 𝗵𝗵𝗃, then Callum O'Hare, then Carvalho. And the worst passers, Gonzalez and McAtee, are actually bottom of this list when compared with all these players. And when linking the play in the opposition half, O'Hare and Carvalho are the best. Duels, Robertson, Castanos, 𝗵𝗵𝗃, and O'Hare win the most duels. Carvalho the least. It's obviously not his game to get stuck in. So when we look at defending, Robertson both receives the ball the most and clears the ball the most. O'Hare is dribbled past the least. Castanos has the least clearances and possession won. Carvalho is dribbled past the most. Again, come back to that area. Gonzalez recovers the ball the least, tackles the least, intercepts the least. He's clearly better going forward. Overall, if you're looking at goal scoring and an attacking midfielder that can do that, Gonzalez is the best. Carvalho and O'Hare would be the best well-rounded players. But 𝗵𝗵𝗃, at that young age, could be exceptional. He is very well-rounded, possibly would cost a lot. So I've actually decided that on loan, Carvalho is the number one target. O'Hare, second place. Again, it depends what happens with his side. Gonzalez in third. And I really like 𝗵𝗵𝗃, maybe one to look out for in the next few years.
Very exciting, some of those names as well that's coming out there. I think Callum O'Hare, obviously, depends on his club, but also I think his contract's up in the summer. I think so. If he doesn't sign a new contract, then I do think there'll be a flurry of teams chasing his signature. But again, you've got to hope that unless there's Premier League teams that are coming in to try and make that transfer, we would be as competitive as anybody else in trying to bring him in. That's how I'm going to word that. I think, of course, there's players there like Fabio Carvalho, who obviously is on loan this season. I expect him to go out on loan again. And to be honest, again, unless Hull are promoted, unless Hull win the playoffs or find a way to get promoted, I would expect us again to be in the market. And we will be looking, we've spent our money on loans in recent years. McAtee, relatively expensive loan. We are going down that route. And so it's certainly a fairly realistic prospect to think that we will be looking in that market for the creative, talented loan player that we couldn't afford to buy. So Carvalho sounds a fantastic shout. And I know he has been linked with United a little bit before. The only other name I'd throw out, and again, it ties into what I said before about Plymouth's potential relegation, is Morgan Whittaker. And the reason I throw him out is he's been an exceptional goal scorer so far this season in the Championship. When he's played for Plymouth, their results are generally better. He scores goals, he creates goals, and he has been an outstanding player in the Championship, to the point that some talk about, even in a team that is currently only, I think, 4 points above the relegation zone, he could be Player of the Year in the Championship. And so if they're relegated, again, maybe there is a deal that could be done for a player of that standard who we've already seen excel in the Championship. So that would be my only addition to the names on your list, Hal, your heavily, extensively researched list, compared to me going, what about this guy? And so I trust
sometimes
you picked out the right names.
Sometimes what about this guy is actually the best option. And when I watch football, I'm an eye test guy more than a stats guy. But for videos like this, I think stats can bring it to life. But when you really watch football, you sometimes see a player try something, and statistically, when it doesn't come off, it looks like a loss of possession. Yeah. But actually, had that come off, and the next time they do it, it does, you think, okay, he's got something there. He's also mentally, you see, someone who's not put off by trying a trick when it failed first time. You're not going to get that in stats. So I always prefer the eye test. And that's why I like you throwing names out there that you've seen. Like you just mentioned, Plymouth have got some players that, if you're playing Football Manager or Champ Manager back in the day, you'd look at the teams that are going down and just pick off.
Yes. I'm having all the best lads from the relegation teams. That's how I'm building a promotion.
And that's what teams will do for Sheffield United, most likely. We're looking at us and our best players, as we've already mentioned. Now, I want to give a shout out to 𝗬𝗚 Roberts, friend of the channel. He's a scout and he also contributes to the Pinch. And there was one player, Ollie, that he has been mentioning on social media for the past forever, which is 𝗤𝗏𝗚𝗏. I may have said his name wrong. But you heard of this guy?
From Riley and how excited he is about the potential for this player playing for Sheffield United. You know, like you say, he has been covering him extensively for weeks and weeks. And I can understand why, because he does look a real talent and certainly the kind of player who, if you can bring him in, it would be sensible to do so. He seems to fit the mould as well in terms of a player who comes in the right age profile, who would then be able to potentially increase significantly in value, which again will be something that the club are looking to and how they're doing their business going forward, or at least how we would hope they are doing their business going forward. Have you deep dived, or are we directing people to go and read Riley's different Twitter feed?
Read Riley's stuff, definitely. But I have done a deep dive on strikers, and this is where I'm going to wrap it up in terms of incomings. And Ollie is going to gaze into his crystal ball, and then we'll leave you alone. So I've compared the strikers with the striker that I think will probably leave Sheffield United, and that is Ollie McBurney with his championship season of 2022-23, which means, Ollie, I've tried to find strikers in a similar mould, because if you're replacing like for like, now there aren't too many players that can do everything that Ollie McBurney can do on his best days, because he is a target in the air, but he's also very good on the ground as well. But we will need a striker. There's absolutely no doubt of that. And in the Championship, Ollie McBurney played 2,221 minutes in that 22-23 season. Now, 𝗤𝗏𝗚𝗏 is obviously where I started with this because of, I mentioned, brilliant work that Riley's done. Norwegian footballer who plays as a striker for Sparta Rotterdam in the Eredivisie. I've looked at them this season. He's played 2,731 minutes, hugely tall, 26 years young. Rafa Mujica, a Spanish footballer who plays for Arunca. I've liked looking in Portugal. I think there's value there, but he's also played in La Liga. And 2,079 minutes he's played. And Samuel Essanda, a French professional footballer who's a striker for Vizela, again in Portugal. And a name that's not that well known, but Samuel Essenda is 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏. So if I've said that wrong, that's how you can search him. I've also had a look at Cameron Archer in this. With us this season alone, 1,455 minutes played. Of course, only 22. Liam Delap, again, getting more into that kind of Cameron Archer mould, and more in the McBurney mould, 𝗤𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏. Had to throw 𝗤𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 in here.
Yes.
And Ipswich, of course, on loan from Bournemouth. Another who is probably going to return to the top flight if given the chance. And if Ipswich go up, I think he will be given the chance. But I've run the numbers on him anyway, as many Blades fans have been calling for 𝗤𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 to be signed. So I've looked at the Championship 2023-24, so for this season. Only 756 minutes played. He's 31, as we know, really tall, but there is something there. Jay Stansfield, I've thrown him into the mix. Birmingham City on loan from Fulham, he's only 21. Yeah. Fleming, from Millwall. Again, probably quite expensive. He's 25, 2,982 minutes played this season. And Tulu Arakaderi, a Nigerian footballer who's a striker for Genk. Quite a lot of excitement around him. Only 1,307 minutes played. Also, would be probably quite expensive. But 𝗤𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏, Mujica, and Essanda have the best goals per game. That is the headline stat when it comes to shooting. Getting shots off, Mujica and Moore ahead of all the others. Cameron Archer by far the lowest. However, he's playing in a much harder league. And again, I've mentioned at the start, you have to take that into account. Shots on target follows a similar pattern. Lauritsen and Essanda really high on that, being closest to Moore and Mujica. Scoring frequency shows that Moore and Mujica to be the best. Goal conversion, dribbles, conversion rate, passing also shows, amazingly, 𝗤𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏, Mujica and Essanda to be the most effective. Best goal scoring wise, Mujica and Moore. The worst players there, Archer. However, league he's playing in, chances that other players will create for him has to be taken into account. And actually, Fleming's poor in that as well. Lauritsen creatively provides the most key passes. Essanda, Moore, Mujica and Delap draw the most fouls. Archer and Arakaderi, who I mentioned just at the end there, the Genk striker, are safest in possession. And even when we look at touches per game, all players have a similar amount. Arakaderi and Moore create the most chances. Lauritsen, Moore, Arakaderi and Delap are the most creative. Essanda and McBurney are the least creative. All players are a similar kind of dribbling level-wise, with Lauritsen and Archer having the most success. Mujica and Archer stand out when it's best passing players. Moore and Lauritsen seem to much looser in possession, probably the best way of putting that. The rest crop are a very similar level. 𝗏𝗏 and Jay Stansfield carry the ball at the highest level. Fleming and Moore progress the ball through passing the most. 𝗏𝗏 and Archer stand out with the most successful take-ons. Receiving the ball high in the penalty area shows 𝗏𝗏𝗀𝗃, Kiefer Moore and Ollie McBurney far ahead of the rest, with the other players again being, except Fleming and Archer, similar level, but Fleming and Archer have less touches in the penalty area than everyone else. Most progressive carries of the ball seems to be Liam Delap. However, passing it and receiving it, McBurney and Kiefer Moore. And I do think those two are similar players. With possible departure of McBurney, aerial duels won is an area which needs addressing. McBurney wins 50% of those. The best replacement would be Lauritsen, 𝗏𝗏, Moore, Fleming, and 𝗏𝗏𝗀𝗃 in that order, who all have like a higher aerial duels won, with 𝗏𝗏𝗀𝗃, I think, probably one that we may not know that much about, but I think he's really strong in that area. And the players who win the least, Archer, no surprise, 𝗏𝗍𝗃, Stansfield, which did surprise me a little bit, and Delap. Overall, just to make this really simple, Kiefer Moore seems to be the most overwhelming candidate to not only replace Ollie McBurney, but strengthen our attacking options.
Yeah.
He is a goal scorer in the Championship. He brings other players into play with his creativity. He's strong, he wins duels, and he can actually progress the ball, which you might not think looking at him. Rafa 𝗏𝗍𝗃 is an option as a goal scorer who can come in, scores goals, can carry the ball, can pass the ball, but he doesn't win things in the air. So he's a different sort of striker. 𝗏𝗏𝗀𝗃 and Lauritsen also seem like variable options. Everyone knows how good Cameron Archer is, but I see a Premier League side going for him. So therefore, and I also don't think he'll come back to Sheffield United, unless, again, lottery or new owner, or Aston Villa take pity on us and loan him out again. Moore is my number one target here, which I never thought I'd say, because I've never really been a huge fan. And then that's just eye test, but stats-wise, Moore wins this. I like 𝗏𝗏𝗃 as a Hal striker. He's my favourite that I would want to watch play for Sheffield United. I think he's the most exciting. 𝗏𝗏𝗀𝗃, Lauritsen, they're probably joint third. And that concludes all the things I'm going to say.
I am not sure of what my conclusion is, but I have finished my sentence.
Thoughts, brackets, feelings?
Yes, Kiefer Moore certainly is one who stood out to me. I thought, it had been one that tempted me to go in for this season. I thought he was a really exciting option. I think he does bring something different whilst almost improving on what McBurney brings to Sheffield United at the moment. I think he would be fantastic if we could bring him in, and I'd certainly be interested in what that looks like. I think, of course, the elephant in the room is the strikers who will remain at Sheffield United beyond this season. When you look at the profile of the players I expect us to have on the books, 𝗏𝗏𝗀𝗃 will be there. He is obviously a bigger player who's going to try and be physically competitive. Whether or not he's ready for that yet at his age is a huge debate. Ryan Brewster will still be at the club. Yeah. And will Dan Jebison still be there? And I think that's a really important question as well, because obviously what we want to be looking at in terms of those strikers is a partner. Who's going to be the partner to one of these players that we've already got lingering around Sheffield United? And looking at his linking, looking at the fact that he is a striker, looking at how tall he is and physical, Kiefer Moore just seems to tick those boxes for being the perfect partner to what we've got, as well as being a fantastic player on his own who improves Sheffield United's attacking options. The other one that obviously I lingered on, I know he didn't jump out necessarily in those stats, but Jay Stansfield is one who does stand out for me. Obviously, he had a really emotional loan last season with Exeter, where his dad had played, and I think that was a fantastic story, which meant that people were following his career a little bit more. It got people a little bit more invested. Sounds as though he started, much like Birmingham City, to be honest, started fantastically, and then they employed Wayne Rooney. So, can we judge him for that? We'll see. I think, anybody who employs Wayne Rooney brings it on themselves at this stage, because
that's a good point. Not so much with the Rooney thing, but it's a good point that, again, the eye test and the stats thing. Stansfield, I think, is probably going to be a really good striker. It's going to be, and will probably cost a pretty penny.
Yeah, you'd have to sign him. I think Stansfield would be a loan, wouldn't he?
It'd have to be a loan. And 𝗏𝗏𝗃𝗃, who I'm saying 𝗏𝗏𝗃𝗃, it's 𝗏𝗏𝗃𝗃𝗃. Now, historically, he's not been a really good goal scorer, but with Aruka, he has found that form. When you look at him with Las Palmas, that didn't really happen. But he's 26. But I think I like the stats. But again, the Portuguese league, I think, is one that offers value, certainly more than signing players from England.
Yeah, entirely. And I think as well, the age profile really means that he's got to take a shot on something if he wants to try and have that career, if he wants to come across to England.
Yes.
And he will be looking to take that chance now. This is the time for him to really come over. There's value in that league and in that move. And so it certainly makes sense to me, as not somebody I've seen, but just hearing the stats there. I think it gives us an option, and I think they are interesting. And, we've got a new recruitment team coming into Sheffield United. We don't quite know who they are yet. Let's hope that they've watched this. They've listened to all of Hal's stats, and maybe Hal is the new recruitment team. This is his way of breaking it to us. This is his audition. He's like, I've gone away. We're going to be data focused.
Absolutely not. Don't ever work for a football club you love. It's my advice. Don't
say that out loud, Hal. Don't put it into the world, because, of course, we're all still kind of hoping that 𝗍𝐸 comes back and he runs our recruitment team. So, let's have somebody who loves the club.
Jay can do it, absolutely. He's much more intelligent than me. Jay, if you want it, for what he's done with Luton Town and their budget, and they're cutting the cloth accordingly, and you know my thoughts on how Luton, compared with Nottingham Forest, have done business, I'll just leave it there.
Yes, indeed. But bring us on to our crystal ball now, Hal. Mystic man coming at you to see whether or not he can predict where Sheffield United are going to be this time next season. And it's hard. It is really, really hard to get beyond the idea of this season. And I think that's what's been really difficult more than anything. In trying to look forward 12 months, where will Sheffield United be on the 23rd of March, 2025? And it's tough. It is tough. I sat down, I talked to Gab about it. Gab covers the Championship really extensively, so obviously has a lot of thoughts and opinions on where that looks. And when I've spoken to him, he said, I don't think you'll be particularly good. I'm worried about Sheffield United next season. I'm looking at what you do right now, and I think your best hope is to be a team that is mid-table and hoping to get into the playoffs. He thinks that we would be similar level to some of the teams that are in there now. When you look at Hull, West Brom, they were the teams he referenced, and he said you'd probably be a bit below them, I imagine, looking at what you've got. And I found myself going into my conversation with him saying, I think we'll be around the playoffs. And yet, as he said that, I was like, no, don't insult my team like this. I will not have this slander, sir. And I looked at it, and you think we're going to be a recently relegated team. We're going to have parachute payments. We're, from what we talked about earlier, going to have sold players for fees up to, £40 million? If we say get 10 million for Sousa, 10 million for Enel, and what is the rumoured fee that we would get back for Archer? You'd hope for more than that, but let's lowball it and say 40 million to 50 million in terms of the money we get in. That is money to build a fantastic Championship team. If you've got half of that money to spend, we can rebuild this squad with a number of the players that we've talked about already today, if their reported values are correct. It's 12 months since our squad got 92 points in the Championship. Now, we've lost some of the key players from that team. Obviously, we don't have the star value of Iliman and Dye, and that is impossible to replace, as we've seen from all of our attempts to do so. But this team was a fantastic Championship team that, quite frankly, were promoted with relative ease. We went through half a season in a transfer embargo saying we weren't playing that well and got 92 points. Have we got significantly worse since then? No, not. We've had a really difficult season, but so have Burnley, and no one's telling me that Burnley are going to finish 10th. We're not the only team here that's had a really bad time in the Premier League. It's a huge jump. Is the Championship better than it was when we were last in it? No, not that I can see. They've 4 really outstanding teams. 3 of them will be promoted, and if the one that isn't promoted is Ipswich, will they maintain this level? Are they on a good run? Will Kieran McKenna stay for another season in the Championship? Will Nathan Broadhead stay with them for another season in the Championship? Will their standout players not be picked off by Premier League teams or the promoted team? So you have to look at the Championship as well and say, it's not in a fantastic place right now. There's not a group of teams that you're looking at saying, these are fantastic teams who will be standouts, who will take the league by storm and dominate Sheffield United. So I've took all that into my thinking for the crystal ball. And ultimately, for me, it's the emotional impact that the fans and the club have gone through. And I look at myself, and I can only speak for myself and how it's affected me. But to be honest, like I said earlier, the recent performances at Bramall Lane have broken me a little bit. I don't look forward to the next time I go to Bramall Lane right now, because I sit there and think, who's going to stick 5 past us this week? It makes it really difficult to predict that we will get it right next year. We don't know who our recruitment team are yet for the summer. So are we going to find the right players to rebuild this squad? We might have got the money there. Have we got the people there who are going to find and identify the right players? Do we trust the current structure at the club that they're going to get this right? And that's the really key question, because I think when we look at the club over the last 5 years, how we ended up in the embargo last January, we probably say the structure at the club hasn't been right. It hasn't got those big decisions right post-relegation to really put Sheffield United on even keel going forwards. But there are positives. There's a potential move to a new training ground. There's a potential Category A academy. These are huge steps forward for the football club. They are something to show for all this period of success we've had of being in the Premier League. And that says to me that they are doing and thinking about the right things for the future of Sheffield United. And that is positive. And that says to me they're getting this right. They are learning, they are developing, they are going to get this right. So in 12 months, where are we? I actually don't think Gab's wrong. I think in 12 months' time, Sheffield United are somewhere around 9th in the Championship. I think we've started the season relatively poorly as we've tried to recover from the emotional scarring of this season. I think we will probably struggle until November, very similar to the 𝗍𝗍𝗂𝗏𝗏 𝗂𝗂𝗏𝗏 season, where we just have a start where we can't get going because there's a hangover, there's a change in sort of what we're trying to do, and the players just can't quite get themselves back up to the level. I do think that means we will have a new manager this time next season. I'm not sure that Chris Wilder will be the one who turns this around for us, and that does make me sad. I don't want him to not be that man. I think for what he's done for us, he deserves the chance to take it and have an opportunity with it. But I just don't see where we are right now, how he's the one who turns this around, looking at the current squad, the current players, and how he's worked with them so far. But I do think we'll be in the midst of an upturn. I think we will be on our way towards the playoffs. I think next season, as 𝗍𝗏𝗏 said in his interview on Radio Sheffield only last week, the target is that we will finish at least in the playoffs. And I do think that we will, after a little bit of a hard start. But I don't want it all to feel as though I'm negative on our chances or the things that are happening. I think we're going to have some real big bright sparks. I think 𝗍𝗏𝗏𝗏 and Andre Brooks are going to be standout footballers in the Championship. I think they are going to be two players who this time next season, I'm not going to be sat here saying, I'm just not that bothered about any of the squad. I'm going to be sat here saying, I love these two footballers as much as my wife. And they're going to be the players that I hang my Sheffield United hat on and say, that is the future of how we go forwards. I think if he stays at the club, and there's a big if hanging over that, but if he stays at the club, I think Daniel Jebbison is ready for a proper breakout season now. He has had injury problems that have held him back. He had a really bright start to his career with United and then a good loan at Burton, but it's never worked for him properly yet. I think he's got the opportunity to do that for United next season because we will need him to do that. And so there are bright sparks coming through our academy that will give us the things that go, yes, this is a team and a club on the rise, but I think it's just going to be a bit of a journey to get there. So my crystal ball says this time next year, Sheffield United are in the race for the playoffs. They have a new manager and we have some really talented young stars that we are worshipping at the altar of Bramall Lane.
Imagine now if Sheffield United stay in the Premier League this season. All of this is irrelevant.
I'll tell you what, Hal, if Sheffield United stay in the Premier League this season, I'll give you anything you want. Anything at all.
That's
you can name a price and I will give it you if United stay up because we have, well, if Sheffield United stay up this season, it will be the single greatest achievement by any football team ever.
Yeah, I'll probably go along with that. Well, thank you for consuming Sheff United Way content. Ollie, it's been such a pleasure getting to chat with you again. We'll hopefully do many more. Watch us, listening to us, however you get your Sheff United Way stuff, bits, and crucially things. It's really appreciated. Thank you.
Cheers, guys.